Greetings, beloveds. In this video, we're going to be taking a look at owning stocks that defy markets that are dropping. But first, I greet you in the love light of the one infinite creator. Now, I've been doing Breakout since 2002 for paid clients, not for myself, but for clients. So there's a lot of experience here. But one thing that comes to play, or is always something that I have to always remind myself and clients, is whenever you see a market in a big drop, it is important to look for new leadership, because usually there will be leadership that emerges from a market sell-off. Now, recently, S&P 500, of course, has gone on this drop here as we go into March, April of 2025. Now, take a look at SE. So the stock we're going to be discussing here is SE. And you can see that even in the last couple, this is the stock, ticker symbol, C Limited. And you can see even as far as 3 weeks ago, so 3 weeks ago, the stock was already breaking out right here. Now, if you go back to the S&P 500 chart 3 weeks ago, S&P 500 closed right here. And of course, S&P 500 is not back to its highs. Not back to its highs, but SE was at its highs 3 weeks ago. So definitely, that's leadership. And there are many stocks that are doing this. Now, the story in this example is not what is happening currently, but what happened in 2020. So let's go to 2020, and to be specific, so this is S&P 500 in 2020. This is April 16th, and you can see after the market really saw a huge drop here in March of 2020. We know the reasons why. It looked like the world was coming to an end. Now compare that. So 2020, April 16th. Take a look at the same stock again, same stock, SE, and you can see in that time frame, while the market was down, it was already moving and breaking out. It was back to new highs. But actually, there's something else also on this chart that might escape most of our immediate attention. You can see if you go back to 2019, there's a breakout here to new highs, and that breakout is at about, let's call it 15. Let's call it 16. It goes to the high eventually. It initially goes to the high here of 35. So that's a double. And then again to the highs here of early 2020, the highs of about 51. So this stock at that time had a huge run. So this is at more than 100. And so you consider that move there. We are talking 300% gain from here to the high, from the highs here to here. Now compare that to the S&P 500 in that same time frame. You can see S&P 500 in 2019 tries to break out and fails here. But ultimately, we can say that with all these failed attempts, tried again here and failed, and then ultimately broke out. So you can see that it was not performing as well as SE. Now, the reason why I mentioned April 16th of 2020 is because that's when I sent out a breakout alert for SE, because there were stocks in April of 2020 that were breaking out already. So even as the market was scared of what was to come in 2020, some of us were already looking for breakouts. There were a lot of stocks were breaking out, and most of the stocks went to record amazing run. SE was breaking out here above 51.86 when I sent that alert. Now that was the breakout was sent on this day right here when it cleared the prior weekly and monthly highs. Now remember, by that April, if you take a look at the monthly chart, this is not a stock that was giving us, some type of a fake look. You can see performance against the S&P 500. This is against the S&P 500 right here. It had been outperforming the S&P 500 for months. This is a 3-year monthly chart. So it had already been outperforming the S&P 500 by a long shot going back to mid 2019. And also take a look at where the RSI was trading, and take a note of where the monthly closes were right here. This is the monthly close over the 2 months prior to the breakout. So very tight base on a monthly closing basis. So by the time the stock is breaking out and I'm sending that alert, yes, the market is scared, but this stock, especially given the power of the RSI above 69.1, was one that was giving a lot of indication that there was potential for more upside. Now again, remember, this is what the S&P 500 was doing at the time. It had dropped all the way from here, rallied all the way to here. We didn't know that the market was going to go back to break those lows. So we did not know that, but some stocks were already breaking out. Now, if you take a look at the S&P 500, we're going to go forward by 1 month so we can get a little bit of an understanding what happened next. So let's go to end of May, and you can see S&P 500 is now trading, has moved up a little bit right there. 1 month later, take a look at the stock, SE. Look at how much this thing has taken off. Remember, S&P 500 is still not breaking out, but this stock is already working on almost 5, 6, 7 straight weeks to the upside. Let's go forward by a month so we can understand how these things play out. Let's go to end of June. All right, done there. Take a look at end of June. Stock was settling down again. So after a nice run here, let's take a look at what the S&P 500 looked like in that time frame. S&P 500 has yet to break out. In fact, S&P 500 was gone into this sideways base. All right, let's go forward by a month here. Just want to show you why the advantage of owning leaders is while the general market could be struggling, you can see now by July, S&P 500 is clearing this range, but has yet to break out. As you can see, it has yet to challenge the prior highs. Short-term breakout here. Let's take a look at what SE was doing at the time. And you can see it was already breaking out. So that little breakout in the S&P 500, this stock was also breaking out. And again, this was a buy. Believe it or not, this was another buy area right here. Definitely another buy area. I know most of you might be scared by this RSI, but this RSI tells me that there's a lot of strength. Now to save time, let's go to all the gains going into this from the breakout here to the highs of late 2021. There's a 760% gain, and I'm talking from the breakout right here. 760% gain by October of 2021. Compare that to the S&P 500, which in the same time frame, or at least since the S&P 500 broke out in that same time period. So we can say this breakout here by the SPX, the gain here from here to here, S&P 500 was 51%. So 760% by owning the leader or by playing the markets and gaining 51%. That's what you get by concentrating on those that break out, meet the minimum requirements, and break out while the market is still in trouble. That's it for now. I am Eric with Mother.com. I leave you as I found you in the love light of the one infinite creator. Go forth rejoicing in the power and in the peace of the one creator. Adonai.